Hi, how's it going? I'm glad you tuned in. I wanted to share something with you, this being Halloween, Halloween month. It's my favorite month, and I figured I'm going to do something different this year. I've got my YouTube channel, and I've got a way of expressing these different interests of mine. And perhaps you have similar interests. Maybe I can encourage you to explore the interest I have. I did a video last time about my interest in UFOs, um, and I wanted to explore in different videos. I wanted to explore the different aspects of why I think Halloween is the best month. And one thing, especially in my childhood, one thing that I really enjoyed about Halloween was television and the television shows where, regular TV series. Now everything's streaming and it's all blocked and truncated and so forth. But back when you had cable television, you had ABC, CBS, and NBC, and much of the viewing audience watched those three networks. You had shows like Night Court and Punky Brewster and Garfield, Facts of Life, and so forth. They would do themed episodes, and around Halloween time, it was fun. It was like watching their own takes, each of their shows' own takes on Halloween themes. So I wanted to share some of that with you. Uh, First, before going into TV, I wanted to mention Elvira and basically horror hosts in general. Thankfully, they still have horror hosts, I think. There's still somebody in Chicago that I've watched, and then of course our cable system switched to Antenna TV from I can't remember what it was before offhand, but he was a son of Svengoolie. Oh, yes, Svengoolie is still doing weekly. I think it's Saturday evening. Beyond it would be on tonight if you can get this. If the station airs that TV series, Svengoolie, they would air a movie, and this goes way back, decades ago to the 1950s. They would air a movie, usually like on Saturday night or Friday night, and it would be introduced by a somebody dressed up in like a vampire costume or something of their own creation, and it was really fun because it was like Halloween every week. Um, and Elvira was one of those back in the 1980s. There was somebody before that in the 1950s called Vampira, and she was like a vamp, read for vamp, seductress, or kind of attractive, but in a dark way, gothic way, and she may have been one of the first horror hosts. She was based in Los Angeles, and there are other horror hosts that came on the scene later on. It's interesting. Each city would have its own horror host, and I can't believe that they didn't know about each other. But they had the same format. They would have a movie late at night, and they would introduce it. There would be some comic skits, and they would talk directly to the host would talk directly to the audience. And I have a DVD actually over here. I think it's called American Scary. Yes, American Scary, and it's a documentary about all these horror hosts through the decades. Um, and it's interesting seeing their different takes. Like one is a vampire. Some of them were vampires, some of them were werewolves, some of them were witches, some of them were just odd creatures. And there was one in San Francisco that was just dressed normally, but he was very acute and very aware of movies in general. And I guess he had some fame. I didn't grow up with, I didn't live all around the country, so I haven't been able to sample all these different ones or many of them, only a few thanks to YouTube. Um, but I wanted to, going back to Elvira, um, So she had been one of them. I believe she was based in Los Angeles, but she gained nationwide fame because well, I should tell you who the actress was. Cassandra Peterson started off in The Groundlings, along with somebody you may know better as Pee Wee Herman. He died recently, relatively recently. His real name is Paul Reubens. Um, Cassandra Peterson, Paul Reubens, and several others. I believe Phil Hartman was in there too. It's still existing. I read it's 45 years in counting of their existence. They would come up with their own unique characters, and I wouldn't be surprised if several of them went on to Saturday Night Live, because it's geared towards Saturday Night Live is geared towards those iconic, new, innovative characters. So Cassandra Peterson says that they'd been looking for some kind of new character to replace Vampira, or bring, they were looking for a new Vampira, and she comes in and she has her own look. And rather than copy what Vampira did, she has kind of a hipster, certain personality, almost like Valley Girl. I'd say really like Valley Girl. You combine like a vampiress with a Valley Girl. That's something like Elvira, and she was a regular hostess on, like, I don't know what station it was, probably in Los Angeles. But she would do these cameo, and I didn't live in Los Angeles. I still don't live in Los Angeles. But she would do these. She would make these cameo appearances. She was on a show I enjoyed, TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes, I think more than once. And you can see those episodes on YouTube as well. And she would make these different appearances. In 1988, she came out with her own movie. Actually, a little bit before that, she and Paul Reubens were friends well enough so that there was a plan, from what I read, there was a plan for each of them to appear as cameos in the other's movie. So the 1980s were a fun decade. In 1985, Paul Reubens had already developed his character, Pee Wee Herman, and put out a movie called Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which has a nice, strong cult following. And in there's a cameo appearance of Cassandra Peterson. She's not playing Elvira, but she does have her bit. And there were plans, or there was some suggestion that Paul Reubens would then make a cameo appearance 3 years later, in 1988, in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Or Mistress of the Dark. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Yeah. But that never was. Nevertheless, I've seen both movies. They're fun movies, and I recommend them highly. So having said that, I wanted to move on to these different regular TV shows that had some Halloween-themed episodes, and then go on to mention some unique shows that were regular TV series that dealt with the paranormal in some way, but they didn't. They weren't as wide. They were just plain paranormal, and they didn't just have like a Halloween themed episode. They were just paranormal in general. Twilight Zone, of course, is obvious, and there was a show called Small Wonder. I'm jumping to that first off, the regular TV series. Small Wonder, which is about a father who I believe he had a wife. Then there was a child. Yeah, there was a married couple. He has a son, but he doesn't have a daughter, and I think there's some interest in having a daughter. So he's a robotics specialist. So he creates an android daughter, and it's reminiscent of a show I learned about later on called My Living Doll, which starred a very glamorous, sexy woman called by the name of Julie Newmar. and she made appearances in different TV series. In fact, she played. I don't think she was the first Catwoman. She may have been the first Catwoman in the Batman TV series, 1960s. But she's certainly, by many fans, considered the best Catwoman in the series. Then there's Down to Earth, which was a short-lived TV series. It was, well, the opening theme, which you can see on YouTube, tells the story. It's about somebody, a young woman who lives in the 1920s, and then it's a comedy. I believe she was a maid then too, maybe not. She gets hit by a trolley. She gets hit by a trolley, and then she goes up to heaven. She can't get in until she earns essentially brownie points. She can't earn her way into heaven beyond the pearly gates. So she 30 years later, in the 1980s, she's brought back to Earth as a maid, and and then there's a family that she's a maid for. And again, it's a sitcom. I as a child, I found it very interesting. I've since watched it more recently, and I think it sort of still holds up. And then, of course, there's the Munsters and the Addams Family. I wasn't a big fan, at least I didn't grow up watching the Addams Family. I grew up watching the Munsters. And they both, incidentally, interestingly, premiered the same week, and I believe they ended their second and final seasons in the same week, which is interesting. They were only 2 seasons. The Munsters had a Frankenstein's creature. It was a sitcom. Frankenstein's creature for a father, a kind of a witchy woman as a mother, although she didn't look that witchy. And I'm guessing that they made efforts to not make her look so much like a witch. I'm guessing because Phoebe, somebody or other, played her in the pilot. There was a pilot, a color pilot, which you can also see on YouTube. She was changed out in favor of Yvonne De Carlo. And of course, again, the costume looks different. I'm guessing it was so that she wouldn't be confused with the wife on the Addams Family, which looked more like a witch. Black, dark costume. Okay, so I've covered those. Now I want to get to some TV pilots. I'll get to those Halloween-themed episodes soon. But I wanted to mention some of these TV pilots. There are 2 specials that aired. These are one-time specials that aired sometime in the 2000 something. And they were on different networks. And one of them is called Best TV Shows That Never Were. That's a simply, I believe it's a 1-hour special that shows clips. They both show clips of failed TV pilots. What's a pilot? When a network or studio, actually when a studio decides to greenlight production of a TV series, that's a very expensive endeavor. So they'd rather see a pilot, which is a demonstration. It's a sample. It's a demonstration of what the TV show would look like. Who are the characters and what are the kinds of situations that could come up and so forth. I had done a video earlier in which I talked about writing pitch Bibles for TV series. This would be effectively the next step. After you write a pitch Bible, which outlines on paper what the show would look like, what the kinds of stories would be like, then they hope that you pray a lot. You go to bed, you pray to your deity if you have one, and then the network or the studio, I'm sorry, grants you some development money so that you can create a pilot. And hopefully, if they like the pilot, they will greenlight the TV series production, and then they're off and running and create filming further episodes of the show. It's not uncommon for TV shows to have more than one pilot. Um, Star Trek had a pilot called The Cage, and during filming of it, they changed the name from The Cage to The Menagerie. That's not to be confused with a later episode that shows clips from this in Star Trek. That was called The Menagerie. It was in 2 parts. Not to be confused with that. But anyway, they liked the pilot, but then they said we need to change a few things, so they created a second pilot called Where No Man Has Gone Before. It's been said that was really rare to make a second pilot. Not so much. That's been overblown. That thought about it being really rare to make a second TV pilot being unprecedented and so forth. That's rare. There are other times when there was a second pilot before they finally bought the show. Anyway, both these specials show clips of failed TV pilots. That is, TV shows that did not make it successfully into production. For whatever reason, the studio said, "Well, we're not interested in making that." One is Best TV Shows That Never Were, and the other is hosted by Faith Ford, lovely Faith Ford, called The Greatest Shows You Never Saw, and she hosts that second one. So there are a few shows in there. Right away, off the bat, I'd like to say that I'm often more interested in failed TV pilots than the shows that actually go into production. There's a show called Tucker's Witch, which actually made it to series, although it's difficult to find episodes of it. I believe it went into series. That reminds me of another TV series that lasted 1 season. That was in the early 70s, I believe, and it starred Sally Field, and I can't remember the actor's name. I came across the show only once. Years ago. It was a weird time. It would have been like between 1985 and 1988 because of where I remember my mom and I living, and I was about 10 or 11 at the time. Anyway, it's called this other show is called The Girl with Something Extra, and again, one of those opening themes that explains the premise of the show. There's a man and a woman. They fall in love and they get married, and then on the wedding night, just like in Bewitched, he discovers she's a witch. On the wedding night, she mentions that there are some people that she can read the minds of sometimes, and there are others that she can read their minds all the time. And then he says, well, which one do I fall into? And then she says the second one, all the time. It's interesting, actually. I don't know how they could come up with so many plots to fill 1 season, and I wonder if they ran out of ideas. I haven't seen the whole show. It's amazing. Back then, they would have more episodes per season. It would be typical of like 30 episodes or 26 episodes a season. Like Star Trek had something like that, like 28 episodes, 26 episodes, something like that per season. Now it's like 5, 6. Anyway, so, going back to Tucker's Witch, that starred, I believe, the one who played Gillian Taylor in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. I'm blanking on her name, but it's a detective show, and there's a married couple, and she's a witch, and they both solve crimes. And they play detectives. There were a lot of detective shows back then, and especially married couple detective shows. Hardcastle McCormick, was that? Not sure if that was a married couple or not. Just go on the internet; you can find quite a few of them. So I thought that was an interesting idea. There's another one called 13th Avenue. It's a shame, some of these shows, some of these pilots, you can't really find full-length episodes on YouTube you can just find little clips, and unfortunately, I couldn't find anything more. But it's apparently a sitcom, a zany sitcom, taking place in an apartment complex, and this young boy played by Will Wheaton, later on from to be in Star Trek: The Next Generation, moves in, I guess, with his mom, and all the characters around him are supernatural. There's a witch. There's the landlord is a troll. I was amused by that. There's one woman who's a witch. There's another one who's a werewolf. There's another one who's I think there's a werewolf. There's one who's a vampire, and I just saw this little clip of it. So I don't know that much about the show, but I'd be happy to watch it. All right, now we go back to the mainstay of my childhood, watching regular TV shows that would have a Halloween theme to them. Night Court immediately comes to mind, but let me jump to Punky Brewster, because there was one episode in Punky Brewster I can easily talk about. I don't know if they did any other Halloween episodes, but it's about, Punky was it's an apartment complex. So Punky is maybe like 10 or 11, and she's an orphan. She's living with Henry Warnemont, who's since adopted her, loving and warm environment. And she has these friends to play with in the apartment complex. And there's this one house, I think it's Miss Peavy, one apartment within the building, and the kids talk about how she's a witch and don't go in there. And they mention one kid who was in and never made it out, and all these scary thoughts. And somehow, Punky has a dog, Brandon. That's not the somehow. I mean, she has a dog, Brandon, but somehow, I can't remember how, but somehow she becomes trapped in Miss Peavy's apartment, and she's all scared, and what are you going to do to me? Are you going to bake me in the oven or something or other? It's really heartwarming. This is good writing in the 1980s. Excuse me. Punky learns that this older woman hasn't been out of the apartment in years, and her hip, something with her hip. She's angry at some kid that caused her hip to be, I think it was broken, and she has she's bigoted basically towards kids, and so Punky warms her up, and she finally, at the end of the episode, she finally is happier. She's brighter. She's more optimistic. She has a full physical makeover, and she's walking around outside of her apartment. I thought that was really nice. Then there's there are two specials. There's a Garfield TV special, and there's a Charlie Brown TV special. Keep in mind that at that point when the Garfield special was on, there was no Garfield cartoon series, regular cartoon series. So this was a special treat. There were a lot of comic strip characters that would have just one special, and usually it was holiday themed, like Christmas special or Halloween special, something like that. So this was my favorite of all the different ones, and maybe second of all being It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Let me talk about the Garfield episode. So you may already know. You may already know that Garfield is a cartoon cat. He loves one of my favorites. What's that? Some Italian food. It's they're all like linguine, really. Italian food. A lot of it is pasta or salad, really. Sorry if I with all due respect to Italians, I love Italian food. Right next to Chinese food, but a lot of it's pasta in various different designs. Anyway, lasagna. He loves lasagna. He's lazy. He loves watching TV and napping. Typical cat. So he lives with a pet named Odie, a dog, and John. is the owner of both Odie and the dumb dog Odie, quote dumb dog Odie, or naive dog I should say, and Garfield. And so they go out trick or treating, and Garfield says, "This is I think a half hour thing." Garfield is so happy he's going to get candy, 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 and he's got he's got a bag himself, and he's going to trick Odie into giving him his bag, Odie's bag of candy. So they go around, and there's some run-in with some other trick-or-treaters, and then they somehow, I think they come across a ship, a boat, and they sail to this island, and there's, it's very spooky. They come across, I think, the ghosts of pirates, and something about treasure, and they just want to get Garfield just wants to get himself and Odie off the island back to civilization. And it's very interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if it's on YouTube. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. You're probably familiar with the Peanuts comic strip. Charlie Brown and his sister Sally, his younger sister Sally, and Lucy and Linus and so forth. I believe this was also before, I'm pretty sure this was also before their Peanuts cartoon series, Saturday mornings. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. They all go trick-or-treating, the kids, and there are jokes about Charlie Brown getting a rock at every house. It's funny because Charlie Brown, I look back on it, it's funny at the time, and the creator, Charles Schulz of the Peanuts, had this unique talent for showing kids from the kids' point of view. I mean, you could, as a child, I could relate to these kids. Not that I was like any of these kids, but like sometimes I felt something. I could sympathize with Charlie Brown, and I think many kids did and do. But they were distinct personalities. Anyway, Charlie Brown tended to be pessimistic, and so it's funny that all the other kids would get candy, and the joke running gag was he would get a rock in his sack. Meanwhile, his younger sister Sally Brown, didn't want to go trick-or-treating. She would rather wait another year. It's interesting because this special would air every year, and she says every year she waits for the Great Pumpkin to show up, and it was almost like Santa Claus showing up, and I think there was some intimation or something said about getting wishes or getting something wonderful for showing loyalty, staying up all night to see the Great Pumpkin. And so she convinces Linus Van Pelt to stay with her, and he doesn't want to, but he stays anyway. And I don't remember how it ends, whether there really is a Great Pumpkin or not, because a lot of times in these shows they would intimate, "Oh yeah, you're so silly," and then all of a sudden, the last moment, maybe there really is something. Something hints maybe it's all true. It's like UFOs, oh well, there's nothing true about flying saucers, and it turns out at the end of the episode, it's just a hoax or something misunderstood, and at the last minute, ooh, maybe there really was something to it. So there are those two specials. I want to get back to Night Court. There was one episode where it takes place in a courtroom, and there's a judge that's presiding over evening cases and night cases, thus the title Night Court. And it's a sitcom. It's a very zany, well-crafted sitcom. In one episode, it seemed there was a poltergeist in the courtroom, and they do a seance, and it turns out that there's the poltergeist is really the spirit of somebody who died before, I think there was a fire or something, died before his case could be determined. So in the climax, you have all the characters there conducting a court trial. You know, this is a regular. This is not a big trial; it's an arraignment court trial. So it's a quick, short process. And there's a judge there. They conduct this arraignment process for the spirit of or poltergeist, and all he wanted was justice. That's what comes out in the seance. I thought that was interesting. There's another episode where, I think this is the first Halloween episode they had, where he falls in love with this beautiful woman, and it turns out she's a witch. And how does he, and she's afraid that she can't have a relationship with him because she's a witch. One of those things, you just like, how could she really be a witch? But you don't ask those questions, particularly in a sitcom. There's another one, this last one here, The Facts of Life. There was and I haven't seen this episode in a long time, so I'm recalling it from memory. But first of all, The Facts of Life was a spin-off from Diff'rent Strokes. It takes place in a girls' school, all-girls school, and there was a neighboring boys' school. The girls' school had several interesting characters. After the first season, it was short season, it was pared down to about 4 principal girls and one head mistress who was kind of the cook and then essentially the mother figure. And so this is later on. This is like the 7th season or 8th season when some of them were in college already. I'm trying to remember the plot. There was a suspicion that the headmistress, Edna Garrett, was really a witch, and by the end, and little clues slip in so that by the climax, I remember they're holding their broomsticks at her, in defense, and it turns out it was all a misunderstanding, but I really liked that episode. There are other episodes. Get Smart had a Dracula type figure coming in for a Halloween episode. Get Smart. Barney Miller had an interesting episode, and I remember it was Get Smart and F Troop, which I enjoyed. Now these were shows. F Troop, Get Smart, Dragnet I don't think had a Halloween episode. These were shows I grew up on, and their episodes I don't think were really that memorable. Their Halloween episodes weren't really that memorable, but they're worth mentioning, and maybe you should check them out. So that'll be it for now. I'm sorry my voice is a little stuttery. I'm still getting used to doing these things in front of the camera, and I'm trying to keep these videos down to, this is already 32 and a half minutes. So I'll make it short, as short as I already can make it. And I hope you've had a good day. I hope you continue having a good week, and I'll see you next time. Oh, also, if you like this video, please subscribe. Consider subscribing and liking this video, and I'll see you next time.